Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Saturday, March 18th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 168 days. The game against Michigan in 252 days. The Ohio State Buckeyes are on spring break, but the recruiting beat, no vacations here, friends. No break, no sleep, just ride or die. No sleep till Brooklyn, no sleep till signing day for Alex Gleitman, for Bart Giffler on the recruiting beat for BuckeyeHuddle.com. Lots of stuff to talk about this week. Alex has had a lot of really interesting reports about some really top-level players who are going to be visiting Ohio State later this spring. So today we're going to talk to him about a few of those, and we will welcome Alex in. Alex, I guess the first one is, this really kind of caught my eye. 2024 quarterback Xavian Brown, he is out of Santa Ana, California, modern-day high school, a school that Ohio State has not always had a ton of success pulling guys out of. But out of California, he's visiting Ohio State twice, just this spring. That certainly feels like, that certainly is an encouraging sign, I would say, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's coming with his, I think it's 7-on-7 team, April 1st and 2nd, and then coming back with his mother, the 12th and 13th. I almost wonder if he's got those dates a little bit wrong, because the spring game's just a few days later, but he might just, be able to come out those couple days. So we'll keep a close eye on that. But either way, planning on coming out those two dates. Guy who just recently dropped the top 4, USC, Ohio State. I think it was, I'm blanking on the other two schools. Oregon, I believe, was one, and then Alabama, I want to say, was the 4th, if my memory serves me correct. But either way, I mean, look, it's Matter Day in California, and usually when USC is good, it's hard to get anyone, and they're offering a kid from there, it's hard to get anyone away from Matter Day in California. But Ohio State, from what I understand, has a pretty good shot. And look, this is going to be the kid's first chance in getting to Ohio State and seeing what they're all about. Gets to come up with his boys, gets to come up with his mom, which is probably a little bit more of a business trip. And I think that will be good, because the first time around he'll get to kind of see things, and the second time around they'll probably get to talk a little bit more business, sit down, watch some film, kind of check all the boxes with mom. I think that will be a really important visit. I'd imagine a kid like this is probably going to be taking official visits in the summer, in June, and then, maybe making a decision before his senior season starts. So these are going to be two really big visits for Ohio State if they want a chance to bring this kid in the fold. And I think they've got a shot from what I hear.
Yeah, you never bet on Ohio State pulling a kid out of Mater Day when they're going head-to-head against USC, but how many times have we said, well, if they can get him on campus, anytime you get him on campus, you have a shot. Well, you're going to get him on campus twice, and potentially a third time if you have an official later. So that sounds like they've got a shot. So another player that they certainly have a shot with is defensive lineman Nigel Smith. He's out of Texas. He's someone we saw up at camp last summer, and he's going to be back this year for an official visit. He's a top 50 overall player. I mean, that seems like something, that's a guy certainly that would be a big win for Ohio State on the defensive line in a year when the defensive line is probably a pretty big position of need.
Yeah, I mean, he's a kid. At times I've felt like Ohio State really wanted him. Then at other times I felt like, maybe they don't think he's as good as his rating. But he's a kid who's just been up on campus a ton. I honestly, probably 5 times at least on his own dime from Texas, at least over the last 2 years. I remember he came up at least twice last spring. I think he was at a game this fall. He was maybe 2 visits the year before that. So he's really, really interested in Ohio State. Keeps in contact with Larry Johnson. I think he's a guy who probably right now is a lot of people may be thinking strong side defensive end. I think he's going to end up sliding inside at defensive tackle at 3 Tech. And they got a shot. I think it's Ohio State. I think it's Oklahoma. I think it's Texas A&M. Obviously, proximity not on Ohio State's side, but, clearly him willing to spend his money and make those many trips to Ohio State, to me, shows that doesn't really matter all that much for him. Not that it won't be a factor, but it won't be the factor. And I think Ohio State, the official visits are going to be absolutely huge in this one. I think, how much do you want the kid? How comfortable does he feel? I know Oklahoma's felt good. I know Texas A&M has felt good at times. I know Ohio State. If you asked me probably at the end of last summer where he was going to go, I would have said Ohio State. So I don't really know how this one nets out, but, right now it's middle of March, you're in the top 3 for a kid who's ranked in the top 40 in the country per the composite. That's a pretty good space to be.
Yeah, not too bad, and a long way to go till early signing day, but definitely in a decent position there for the Buckeyes. So Alex is tracking a bunch of guys who are going to be making upcoming visits, like the 2 guys that we just talked about. He's also tracked a bunch of guys who've already made visits in the spring. This is a very busy time of year for guys visiting campus, and Ohio State brought in a couple of guys from the 2025 class last weekend that I wanted to talk to you about. One of them, they just got Jerry Rudzinski's son as a preferred walk-on out of Bishop Watterson High School, which was one of those like, oh man, we're getting old kind of moments. We have more disappointing news, disturbing news, upsetting news. Michael Wiley has a kid, Alex. His name is Jackson Wiley. He is a 2025 athlete. He visited Ohio State. Other than the inexorable march of time being slightly upsetting, this is generally probably very positive news for Ohio State. So let everyone know a little bit about Jackson Wiley, what kind of prospect he is, and where how his visit to Ohio State went last week.
Yeah, he's a really good player. He's a kid who's already about 6 foot, 170 pounds as a current sophomore, not even a junior yet. So he'll be a junior next year. I think he's already got 3 offers. I know Kentucky's one of those, and then I think 2 of the MAC schools, Toledo and Miami, Ohio, I believe, are the 2 others. So he's a kid. I just think it's early in the recruitment. He looks good. I think right now, if I had to bet, I would say he ends up being an Ohio State offer kid, but I think they want him to camp and have a chance for Brian Hartline to work him out this summer before they do anything. Even then, they might say, hey, we just want to see the first 4 to 6 games of your junior season before we do anything. But I think they've done a really good job building the relationship with Jackson. Obviously, where he grew up, who his father is. I think Ohio State, if they offer, that would be it. Whether he ended his recruitment right then and there, or he kind of played it out a little bit and then ended it down the road. I think that's probably part of the reason why Ohio State hasn't offered him to this point, is because they know that they have a little bit of time and they don't want to offer him and then not be kind of change their minds later on. I think they want to be 1,000% sure that he's a kid who they feel is worthy of a scholarship at Ohio State when they eventually give that out. So, really talented kid. He's a game changer. And I think eventually he'll end up in the scarlet and gray.
All right, so let's talk about another 2025 player also listed as an athlete, Jamir Scott. He visited again last week. He is from was it Mount Healthy High School? That is a high school I don't remember ever hearing of, but it's a heck of a high school name. Tell us about Jamir Scott and where does he potentially end up listed as an athlete at the college level?
Yeah, I never really heard of Mount Healthy either, but they got apparently they got like a handful of kids, and it's in Cincinnati, I think. And I looked it up, and David Montgomery, who played at Iowa State and is now just signed with the Detroit Lions, went to Mount Healthy, as did a couple other NFL players. So it's been around. Jamir Scott is I think this kid has a shot at an Ohio State offer. He's a really talented player. He's got a bunch of offers early. I think this kind of, not to sound like a broken record, but I think it's probably in the same boat where I think Ohio State would probably be a game changer for him and his recruitment. He's got 16 offers already. And to me, the biggest one that speaks volumes of how good he is Cincinnati offered. And I know Cincinnati's, yes, I get it. They're joining the Big 12, but they're still at a different level than Ohio State. They're not taking that same level of kid as Ohio State, but they're pretty picky with who they offer, especially with kids in the city, because of the same thing. They don't want to offer a kid and then be wrong about them and kind of ruin some relationships with the local schools. But Penn State's offered, Pitt has offered, West Virginia has offered, Wisconsin has offered, Duke, Georgia Tech, and Purdue. I think those are the Power Fives that have offered him so far. So this is a kid who, defensive back. I think he's a cornerback. He's 6'1", about 175 pounds. We'll see how he grows over the next couple of years. Is he a safety? Maybe. But I think this is a kid with a good camp, could earn an Ohio State offer. Certainly with a good junior season, should earn an Ohio State offer. But expect him back on campus a few more times. before even his junior season starts.
All right, and we are 1 week away from one of the biggest recruiting weekends of the spring. Ohio State will have a scrimmage next Saturday. There are going to be a whole bunch of recruits there. I'm going to guess we're going to have Alex on sometime between then and now to talk about a bunch of those guys. But there are a bunch of guys coming between then and now. Guys coming kind of maybe early to mid next week who are going to be targets for Ohio State as well in some of the upcoming classes. Give people, a name or two to kind of keep an eye on who are going to be visiting maybe earlier next week as the Buckeyes get back on campus for spring practice number 3 and 4.
Yeah, there's a couple guys on the March 21st, I believe, is one of the practices, and I think March 23rd is another one. Those are the 2 days that they're going to be having visitors. And 2025 Ohio kids, I mean, there will probably be more, but the 2025 class are really starting to get into recruiting them. Quarterback Xavian St. Clair, running back Marquise Davis, who does have an offer, tight end Caning Pining. Those are 3 kids, all potentially who could end up at Ohio State that are going to be visiting on March 21st. And then the 23rd, 2024 running back that no one's really talking about all that much, but comes from a familiar school, St. Thomas Aquinas. Ohio State has gone there many times over the years, all the way trying to, I don't know who the first one was, but I know Deron Carter came from there. Obviously, both Bosa brothers, Damon Arnett, Trevon Grimes, obviously that one didn't work out, as did not Deron Carter. But, they've got a number of players from St. Thomas Aquinas over the years. Jordan Lyle, running back, is another one who will be coming up, and people aren't really talking about him. But I think Ohio State, if they push for him, that could be a guy that they potentially could get in this class. And then running back, maybe defensive back, Bo Jackson from Cleveland, great name, has an Ohio State offer since last summer, I believe, when he was a freshman going into his sophomore year, and a couple other interesting Ohio players, Winton Woods, offensive lineman Raphael Green, Winton Woods linebacker Justin Hill, 2 guys potentially who could earn offers from Ohio State at some point over the next few months. So those are 6 guys, 6-7 guys I'd say I'd watch for over those 2 days.
All right, so that'll take care of the midweek practices. We will probably have another show later next week talking about all those guys who are going to be there over the weekend for the scrimmage. That is always a big recruiting weekend. And then there will be another big recruiting weekend after that as they kind of go through spring ball. Another scrimmage, I think, the week after that. And then, of course, the spring game on the 15th of April. So lots of recruiting news coming up in the next week and the next month. And a great place to follow along with all of it is at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Alex and Mark have not just a weekly recruiting columns. Mark does Skull Session. Alex does A-Deck every single week. Very popular features on the site for years and years. But they also do a new daily recruiting column, also called Eyes on the Trail. That's where a lot of the coverage that we talked about today, a lot of the stuff we talked about on this show came from one of those. But they do a daily column covering just players to know, guys who's, maybe kind of coming up on Ohio State's radar, guys who you might be names you haven't really heard a lot about, but you might be names that you're going to hear a bunch about in the future. That is all a daily feature at BuckeyeHuddle.com, as well as those weekly columns from those guys. So if you like the recruiting talk, oh boy, is there recruiting talk at BuckeyeHuddle.com, especially in our huddle board, which is exclusive to our members. So you might want to sign up today and get access to all of that great stuff. We always tell you, give it a try, give it a shot for a month. Well, give it a shot for a month right now. It's going to be a very busy month of recruiting, and then that month will get you all the way through the spring game. We'll have lots of on-field talk, lots of recruiting talk, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.